Ladies and gentlemen, we'll call our meeting of Public Finance and Local Policy Subcommittee to order. And we have one bill to hear today. Dr. Newton, if you will come up and we're going to hear House Bill 136, and you have the floor.
Well, thank you, Chairman and subcommittee members. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. This is one of those efforts we worked on very hard last year all together, and that's the individuals that through no fault of their own have ended up in the foster care system where they're basically essentially wards of the state. We have wonderful programs to encourage people to do foster care, to do adoption. We've done great work on that over the years to streamline those processes and both keeping children with their family and also getting them adopted. Foster care is a very real event that continues to happen where the state takes over that parental role with along with the foster parents. One interesting thing about it that we discussed last year, and probably the base of the Fostering Success Act originally, is that these children, when they come off the state wardship, if you will, at age 18, when they age out of the program, they don't have the usual supports as someone who's had 4 children who've turned 18, and they still need a good bit of support, whether it's assistance with getting into college, with filling out applications, with assistance with their housing, their transportation, their nutritional needs. But right now, the foster care program, it does have an end point. The beauty of the Fostering Success Act is that it allowed us through a tax credit program to have organizations, what we call qualified organizations, to be able to assist these children as they age out of foster care with the transition to adulthood, whether through college, technical school, or other training that they need in order to be gainfully employed and all. It's just been a great program that we've had. One of the little bit of concerns about our program the way it is now, it really doesn't, we have a $20 million max on the tax credits that are allowed in that, and that number just isn't reached with the current limitations we have on that. So one of the goals, there's a couple of different goals that we have in the bill in front of you. Some of them is where we add an additional group. It's small, but it's an additional group of justice-involved youth that have been in our juvenile justice system, that we recognize that many of the same challenges that a foster child might have through lack of a stable home life and lack of mentorship and assistance occur with justice-involved youth. So we did expand that, and you'll see that in the bill that we are looking at today. Additionally, the funding has not been fully utilized with the fairly strict limitations. So one of the things we had looked at and found that there are some additional business entities that we think would be pretty helpful in making sure that these funds are available for the children. So if we want to just begin with the building, the bill you can see on the page 2. We do allow foster children up to age 25. That kind of recognizes that a 2, 3, or 4 year either college or technical training might need that much time, especially since many foster children, they may not graduate until 19 or something like that. If they got behind with all the moving that many of them have had to do, they may not graduate as well on time from high school and therefore be a little slower at getting started. If you look on line 26 is an important piece. The business enterprise is defined there to include an insurance company. They do pay premium tax. Some goes to the local and some goes to the state. This has to do with the amount that's due the state, and the Department of Revenue will help us ensure that their tax obligation, in the same way that an income tax obligation for a corporation or for an individual or family, they can use part of that income tax obligation to donate to this program. This also allows insurance companies who don't pay income taxes but they pay premium taxes, it allows them to utilize part of their tax obligation for this important youth program. You see down on line 42 is the kind of the definition of justice-involved youth. Mentorship services is an important part that you read in line 48. it's one thing to provide, a little bit of spending money or help with transportation or nutrition or housing. What these youth also need is mentorship. So you'll see a good bit in this bill encouraging and even expanding the amount of money that can be paid to a mentor who would assist these aging foster children, former foster children, with role modeling, informal counseling, guiding, motivated, the kind of parental roles that we've asked foster parents to do, but that has now ended once they age out. You'll see down in lines 62 and following, public or private post-secondary institution, just completing their high school diploma, once again, if they've gotten behind in that, vocational school, apprenticeship programs, things like that. There is a provision for being able to compensate the mentor $100 a month or up to $1,200 a year in lines 71 and 73. And so an important part of this does involve those wraparound services, which are described in lines 78 and following. Another kind of lists all the things that we think are important for an organization to be able to do. Line 84 and 85 does have a discussion that we've had, and we agreed on or at least are proposing an increase from the current $20 million to $30 million as a cap a year. Once again, in line 106, where business enterprise, it mentions there where they can get a credit for the tax they pay, since they don't pay income tax, the premium taxes that they would owe. There's a clarification at the bottom of page 5 on lines 118 and following about how the department will handle the situation if the cap has not been reached or if the cap has been reached. And finally, if we can flip on over to, to line 222, if you'll flip over there for me, that's there are some other smaller changes. Line 222 does have an important part of this. We recognize there's an administrative role to having an organization and running an organization. If you'll read this 20% rule, that ensures that a minimum of 80% of any funds that are donated in this program, that for which some individual or a business entity received a tax credit, we want to make sure those funds are new funds and that they go a minimum of 80% directly to those things that assist the child, whether it's food and nutrition, whether it's transportation back and forth to school, tuition, other fees that might be required. So that's an important part of the bill, is to make sure it doesn't get gobbled up in overhead. So that is for this new money, for these tax credits. I think there is some audit information there near the end in line 235 and following, once again to try to make sure that we have some guardrails around this money to make sure that target of no more than 20% maximum going to administration, that's been met and that's followed. So there's some certification statements and some compliance related language there, so that we can ensure that that's going on and that's the way the tax credit is being is being utilized. So those are the summaries of some of the proposed changes to the successful Fostering Success Act, but we want to make sure it's even more successful, that it can really meet the needs of some of these students and these former foster youth, and that they can go on and get that jump to the next step in life, staying out of prison, other things that can happen when you're a 19-year-old boy without a mentor, without a parent. You need money. There's a lot of things that can go wrong and a lot of bad influences. This I think is going to be a great program if we can expand it a little bit the way we're talking, get it fully funded, and plus if the committee's willing to do the expansion on the total amount per year and the ability to reach that through the business enterprise allowance. So glad to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Members of committee? Nobody has a question. Representative Holcomb.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you explain lines 21 to 23? It talks about age 6 through 25, but then it states we're in foster care for at least 6 months after reaching age 14. So if you're under age 14, how would that work?
Let me see. I might need to get some help on some of this. I know there are. There was some language about reunited. Some of these have gone back and forth in being reunited. I might have. I've got some individuals in the gallery or the audience that would that may be able to speak a little better to that. I know one of the big things we did from the previous was to clarify up to age 25, just recognizing that even getting a high school diploma might not come till 19 or 20. And so if we're trying to help them through school, we did want to go to 25. I'm going to have to get a better explanation. I'm sorry about the age 6
Yeah,
portion.
you see the disconnect, right? Between age 6 and age 14?
Yes. I think,
Yeah.
we'll certainly look at that and make sure it's maybe I need to do a better job wording that.
Let me ask you this way. Do you intend for it to start at age 14 or at age 6?
As far as of their definition of them being a former foster child,
Correct.
currently the decision had been that if they had been a foster child after age 6 and at least 6 months after age 14. But you're right, it would probably accomplish it with just the 6 months after 14.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Chairman Martin.
As I following up on Representative Hawkins, as I recall, this was done because sometimes it's tough to get folks that are in foster care in with a family when they get to a certain age because the family feels like they can't take them further. I mean, I don't want to sound crass in that, but it's like, I'd love to have you there, but I can't take on another college education and that sort of thing. So I believe the 14, and it could go to 13 or 12 or 15, but I believe what you're saying there is if this is good for anybody between the age of 6 and 25, and if you had at least 6 months with a foster family after age 14, so that if you were in from 6 to 8 somewhere, that it wasn't necessarily trying to catch you if you weren't in foster care after 14. I think that's what
That's the
had
goal.
been presented
Once
last
again,
year
I'll have
recall.
to.
Now, I don't know if that's the policy that wants to go forward. Maybe the 14 wants to be the low. I'm looking back at some of your folks in the back. There's some yes and
We'll
some
certainly
no
look at
about catching
to make
them. But
sure
I
it's
think
clear.
that's what you were trying to catch, or what was trying to be caught last year, was to help these individuals find a place to land and some help for after they were to age out of the thing, age out of our system.
Correct.
Thank you. You know what? I think we might get some clarification from one of our presenters. Heidi Carr, are you here? Why don't you come join us at the mic over here at the podium? You can stay there, Doc. Okay. And some of those questions might help.
I'll do what I can. Hi, I'm Heidi Carr. I'm the Executive Director for Fostering Success Act, Inc. We're one of the qualified foster care support organizations that's been able to take advantage of receiving funds for the tax credit and then allocating those out through grant awards to other qualified organizations that are supporting the youth aging out of care. Just want to start by saying thank you for supporting this tax credit. We've really been in it now. I think our first youth called us in August of 23. It really went into effect January of 23, but it takes a while to get the word out. And since that time, we've just seen the numbers continue to grow each month. So to answer the question, I think around the age, originally the bill was only eligible for a youth who had aged out of the foster care system at 18, and I think what the purpose is to open that up more to kids who maybe were in care, left care, just to expand. We've had a number of youth reach out to us that aren't eligible under the current legislation, but they're definitely deserving of some support in continuing education. So I don't want to bore you with too many statistics, but just kind of giving some numbers to what Representative Newton was saying, 81% of the young men that are in foster care will end up doing some type of incarceration. So it's a very high number. I've had a youth call me from prison wanting to see if they could get qualified to get help to start their education while they're in the system. So that's one statistic. 71% of young girls will become pregnant within the first year, and I know that to be true because we have a number of young women that we're helping who have not only one but up to about 3 children already. So there's definitely, I think they get sidetracked without finishing high school. We're working with a number of kids in the technical college system to do either the dual achievement program or Career Plus that helps them earn their GED while they're also starting their technical classes. So we've had a lot of success with that. So just to share our numbers of enrollment in fall, and this is just for Fostering Success Act, Inc. I don't have numbers from all the qualified organizations. We had 133 youth enrolled in technical and 4-year programs in the fall, and in spring we've jumped up to 187. So that's about we had an 82% jump in technical college enrollment, 9% in 4-year degrees. And again, a lot of those technical college, the increase was to get people enrolled in the dual achievement and Career Plus so they can actually expedite their time in getting their education. So it's definitely making a difference. We have a number of youth. One young lady, Ashanti, is a student down in South Georgia in technical school. She's in welding. She should graduate in May, so it's very exciting. But she just needed help. What was holding her back from going to school was the equipment she needed for welding, and that totaled about $500. She needed the boots, the helmet, the gloves, and all of that, and she just didn't have the money for it. Technical school has a tuition waiver program, so that wasn't the issue, but those supplies were preventing her from going, and we were able to come in and take care of that, and she's been thriving in her classes. We have another young man, JC. He's a student at KSU. He's involved in a program there called Ascend, which is a wonderful program that's targeted to kids who are homeless or were in foster care. A great system of support in bringing these kids together. We worked with him on some balance of tuition, but really his main needs were in housing. What we see a lot of is really a struggle in housing, transportation, and food. So we do work with the youth to make sure they're maximizing any federal and state programs out there. So our first conversations with them are around their Medicaid coverage and SNAP, but then, okay, from there, what do you need wraparound services for? And 9 times out of 10, it's housing, it's food, and it's transportation. So these funds are really making a difference. I've heard JC, and it's not just about the money. I tell everybody we talk to, it's really a holistic approach because you can give a hand up with the funds, but their mental health is equally important, and they've really been impacted with a lot of trauma through their lives with the number of moves, being in healthy and not so healthy environments, having bad influences on them. So little things like a tuition balance coming down and they're being dropped from classes can totally spiral them into a major depression. So we want to be proactive and help them, and we're working with the USGF, that's the University System of Georgia Foundation, on identifying the youth and getting these funds to the schools earlier in the process. We work with Embark, that's part of the ETV funding, coordinating and finding students through them. We work with DFACs, also finding youth, and we're getting involved in the Department of Education and other ways of reaching the youth to let them know about the support. And they are just amazed. Most of them, like JC told me, he said, I thought it was a scam. He said, I thought there's no way anybody would follow up with me that fast and would actually give money to me, which we don't give the funds directly to the youth. We're paying it to the school or paying it to different entities. But he said it was just life-changing for him. And that's the similar story we get from all of the youth.
Heidi, tell me again the number that stood out to me. Make sure that I heard that right. You're saying 81% of males that age out wind up in jail?
Yes. They will have some form of interaction with, they may not be overnight in jail, but they will deal with law enforcement. Yeah, it's a high number. And most of them, if they end up going back to what they grew up with, it's just repeating the cycle over and over again. And we really feel like the education piece is the ticket. That's what's going to help these young people find a way to sustain their life, to be financially stable, to break the cycle of what their families have been in their early years, and become part of the workforce. Workforce development is a huge topic around the state. We've had a lot of conversations with businesses that are interested in working with these youth. JC, we were able to work with a major corporation, and he is now an IT intern with this major corporation. They love him. He is thriving. You know, there's some really good kids out there that just need a helping hand, somebody to guide them in the right direction. It's not just paying the bills for people. It's making a difference in their life and getting them to the next level so they can be independent.
Are there any organizations out there, I don't know, United Way and others, that help in this gap, if you will?
I have not met with anybody from United Way. To this date, the organizations I have dealt with have all been those who registered to be a qualified organization. One of the parts I see as I'm learning through the last year and a half of working with the youth and organizations, these youth are very resilient, and they've learned to go after any opportunity. If somebody says, here's something, a resource you might try. So there are a number of kids that we work with. They may also be working with MAC. They may be working with Up3. They may be working with Faith Bridge or Connections Homes, Atlanta Angels. And so when we identify that through us having their name, we get those organizations together to see how can we coordinate and best serve this young person and not duplicate efforts. So those are things that we're doing. But I'm sure there's so many resources, but nobody knows where to go to get them. And so that's what we're focused on, is we're focused on the tax credit only. So we're out there trying to find as many donors as possible to fund and hopefully get to the cap. We're working with the organizations to provide funding to them so they can focus on all of their programming and fundraising that they do on their normal day-to-day to help with overhead and things like that. And then working with the youth and trying to kind of bridge the gap between the DFACS program and the youth getting further out into adulthood and independent living.
Members of committee. Thank you, Doctor. Appreciate you, Heidi, for coming and excuse me, number 18, Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a couple more questions. One is, what is the size of the need versus the credit? How close does the credit, if fully exhausted?
So that's a hard question because we've only been around really for a year and a half. And again, I don't have numbers from other organizations. I can tell you in Fostering Success Act, we helped, we had about 77 kids that reached out in that August to December first year of 2023. And then we've had probably over 300 reach out to us in 2024. Not all of the kids are eligible because they may be enrolled in a private school or for whatever various reasons. We, expenditure-wise, distributed about $4 million in 2024. We expect that to increase dramatically, especially with the changes I would say we should be able to easily double the number of youth that we're able to support quickly. The other piece of that is just our challenge of getting in front of more young people to let them know about the program. And so we're talking to the youth. I'm working on a program now I don't know the name of it, but it'll be like youth ambassadors to get them to help us spread the word. We've had them referring some youth that they've come in contact with, but trying to come up with maybe a social media program to help increase awareness.
Okay, and then last question, if I may, Mr. Chairman, and this is probably for you, Chairman Newton, is can you explain lines 26 and 27 why we're including the insurance companies? Is it just another potential source of revenues that can participate? Is it that simple? Okay.
We have some that are income tax, personal income taxes was one, and then we, of course, added businesses that have pass-through organizations and can use a tax credit that way. And this is one additional way to, entities, people who are interested in helping this group of children that don't pay income taxes. This just allows them to use the tax they do owe as a portion of the program.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, Heidi, for coming and touching my heart. And thank you, Doc, for coming. And if there's no other business for this committee, we shall stand adjourned.
Thank you, sir.